And, I mean, you could do an LRA anyway to avoid the RC exceedance, potentially. But there might be constituents where you would have an RC exceedance, you know, where there's a different threshold for the RC exceedance and substantial hazard. And so you could do an LRA to bring yourself down to a place where you're only notifying on the RC exceedance, so you're not triggering the IRA. So there are some 120-day notifications that would trigger an IRA and some that would not.
But you can't do an LRA if you have anything worse than 120 day. If you had a 72 hour.
That's right.
No, she's not
No,
saying
no, I'm
that
not talking
you
about
would
those.
early.
Yeah, those would get notified earlier.
I mean, I think LRAs are okay, Lizzo,
you
because
can-
you're still dealing with a problem, right?
Currently, it's 120-day conditions, right?
Yes.
So,
Yeah, these
If
would,
you have a
these would make these
72 hour,
harder.
you can't do an LRA.
right,
Right.
so if we were to make this a 72-hour notification, the way the current LRA regs are written, that would
Yeah, but
knock it out.
frankly, the difference between 2 hours and 72 hours doesn't buy you very much.
So,
Buys you a
You're
little
not
more-
fixing.
It buys you a little more time to
Yeah.
discuss it with your client, but you can't take any action.
so what I'm
Or collect
seeing,
more data.
what I'm seeing a big difference with this versus kind of the way it works now, the 2 hour notification, is that the substantial hazard notification here would only apply to sites that have some other 120-day notification. So it would be staggered. Whereas right now, the 2 hour notification exists separate from that. That can be your entry point into the MCP.
Right.
So you go from 0 to,
To
you're in the MCP, 2 hours to do
You're
stuff.
under an
Right.
IRA, yeah.
Here, it's, even if this were a 72-hour notification, it's a 72-hour notification that occurs after
right.
the 120 day.
That's right.
So basically, so
You'd have to.
you've already determined that, look, we have a release, we're in the MCP, you have 120 days to notify
That's
that.
right. It's like a.
But you
speed-
could
still
I
fix
thought you
it.
were doing this at 120 days, not after it.
Yeah, I think you need to
I
connect it
I
all.
thought the one on the right that you've got now is that's the right on the flow chart is
At
an
100.
evaluation that needs to be done at 120
By
days.
I really, I
At
don't
100
think,
when you notify, when you have a notice, when you have
They have to do
notified
the
a
120
condition,
day.
yeah.
Yeah.
you
That's not
have
how
to.
we wrote it originally, but
Right.
yeah.
yeah,
that's right.
I think it has to
I
be
think,
advised.
I think the two scenarios that are on there is you've got a 120-day condition. The A that we talked about first is you basically have a year to evaluate and mitigate a substantial hazard, which it sounds like that's not being favored. Or you have a 120-day notification, and that time, at 120 days, you have to identify whether you have a substantial hazard or not. And
So-
if you have a substantial hazard,
It's
you
another
basically
number.
is turned into an
You
IRA.
can make it I like
What?
the 72,
another
you can make it
Well,
a
it turns into an IRA.
72-hour notification. I think that is helpful, actually. It will give you 3 days.
It's the same
If it's a new site,
120
But
days.
it's
Right, if you
helpful
want to
to
have
think about it
120,
that
then you
way
have an
for
IRA.
existing sites.
Yeah,
If you
this-
identify a new substantial hazard condition, and it's not just something you found at the beginning, so that it would only, the 72-hour
That makes sense.
notification, it would be like the CEP, it would only be relevant on a site where you've already notified. And then if we're talking about a brand new site, it would be something that
At the time.
it would
Well,
occur
I actually-
at the same time.
That's too complicated. I think
No, no,
that's
no,
too
no,
complicated, and you don't
because-
have the opportunity to mitigate it.
Right, but what we're talking about here is talking
It's
about
getting an
only,
IRA.
is talking about only very early days of a site. And it doesn't address the fact that you may have 4 data points at that point, and then at a later time, you may have 5,000 data points where you do now, where you become aware of a substantial hazard. So we don't want the notification to only be at that initial entry, because it could happen at another time, just like a CEP can happen, not just upon immediate entry to the system.
So have a 72-hour notification to
Just like a
DEP that you need to open an IRA
For site-
because of substantial hazard,
Yeah,
That would be,
at any time.
yes, I think it also does make sense to require the evaluation at 120
That's what
days.
yeah.
And then there's sort of a continuing obligation, just as there is with the CEP, which is a 72-hour
Or
notification.
But if you're on a new site,
Well, the imminent hazard is
Right, right.
different, because it's a 2-hour
But
notification.
you always have an obligation as you're getting more data
Right, this is right.
to
but if you're on a new site, And you make this a 72-hour reporting.
No,
no,
because
I-
it would only, like the CEP, it's only a notification if it's already a site.
Okay, yeah, so let's maybe.
So go back to the notification.
Let's go back.
Yeah.
You have, let's say arsenic and soil.
Yeah.
So the way that I'm hearing this described, and I acknowledge there are multiple versions of there, but one way I'm hearing this and the way is we would have, if there were a 2-hour notification for arsenic, it would be based on non-cancer effects. For the cancer risk values, at 120-day notification, there would be 120-day notification just as there is today. If you exceed that, you can take an LRA to eliminate the why it's 120-day notification. At the point of making that 120-day notification, there would also be at that time a checkbox indicator of whether it also poses a substantial hazard. There's a kind of question about how somebody would know that. And is there a list? Is there, you know, is that too much evaluation at that point? But so if there were also, if it was a 120-day notification that also had a substantial hazard, then that would trigger an IRA.
Yeah.
So you go, it would
Within a period.
it would be a category of 120-day notifications that trigger IRAs.
Yes. Yes.
That's what I'm hearing.
Within 72 hours.
72
Well, they have, yeah, they
Well,
have,
no.
well,
Within-
well,
At 120.
It's at 120 days, you trigger an.
Another-
Because it's
another-
72
another
hours
way-
is irrelevant.
another way of
Yeah.
looking at it is that we define what substantial hazards are,
Yeah.
maybe have a list, and the rule being that at any point in the, and not having, there would be no notification requirement for substantial hazards until you are
Yeah.
already otherwise in the MCP. So your choice before you're doing your ASTM phase one,
And that's the 70.
you have soil samples, arsenic and soil. Your question there is, are these concentrations high enough to trigger whatever 2-hour notification we might have for arsenic?
Yeah.
Or do they trigger 120 days?
Right. So you're still
That's
only in
your
those
question.
two.
You're only in those two.
Yeah.
If it's,
Or 70.
if it's arsenic.
72.
Oh, yeah,
72.
arsenic.
There's no 72.
Intentionally keeping away from the petroleum.
Okay.
120, so you find that it doesn't trigger the imminent hazard number, it's a 120-day notification, you notify for 120-day notification. Now,
Yes.
once you're in the MCP, there is would be a requirement to identify and notify and address any substantial hazards.
Yes.
You said notified.
Well, you have to tell us.
Yeah.
You have to tell us that there's.
Aren't you telling them when you check the box?
Well, no,
He's
I'm-
talking about taking the box out.
Oh,
I'm
okay.
saying,
Don't regulate by form.
Okay. No, but I mean,
No,
I
but
still have to
it's,
get people to
it's-
look at it within a period
well,
of
it's
time.
effectively
Well-
the same thing, but without having this box and with it, it creates a like continuing obligation to notify.
right, so there's
just
a
once.
separate question
Yeah.
about how, which, going back to earlier discussion that we already have about how we get people now to constantly question and evaluate whether they have imminent hazards, would be the same issue
Yeah.
we'd have here.
It's the same issue.
But it would be much like substantial release migration,
That's right.
where it only, the 72-hour notification for substantial hazards would apply to sites that are already in
Yeah.
the system. It would be a 72-hour notification and would trigger an IRA. And
So how are we getting people who have the 120-day, what time period are they gonna be doing
I'm not-
their evaluation?
so I'm not,
By the
first, I'm trying to
Yeah,
describe
the
what I'm hearing as well.
By the-
Yeah.
So there's gonna be something as part of notification that's gonna say you have to do this evaluation.
Going back to the question of, for any site now, where you come in with a 120-day notification, there is always
Yeah.
a requirement to continually look for imminent
Yeah.
hazards.
Right.
So
You'd have
the
to
way that
Make
this
that
was
clear.
described, and you know, don't say it would be, there could be,
Yeah.
if one were to pursue something like this, which we're not saying we are, that it would be a similar thing, that there would be this notification. And then the question would be, and an interesting discussion, you know, how do we improve that? Because I've heard this morning that that is not, for the imminent hazard, continually evaluating whether or not there's an imminent hazard. I've heard that that might not be working as perfectly as we
Well, I think,
hope. And this would have the similar strengths and weaknesses of how do you continually get people to evaluate whether there is a substantial hazard or not. Nancy has the answer.
No, I just want to interrupt because people are leaving at different times. But I just made up sort of a sign-in sheet for risk assessors. It's for me, for risk assessors contact, because I no longer have a risk assessment list. I'm hoping at some point in the future we'll have work group meetings about risk assessment guidance. And so if you want to be involved in those meetings, just sign this before you go. Okay, thanks.
Okay,
That's all.
and for people watching on YouTube, sending Nancy Bettinger an email
Yes.
at nancy.bettinger@state.ma.us saying that you would like to be involved in a risk assessment work group would also work.
Yes, thank you.
Paul, I'd like to go back to one comment I had earlier, was that I'm a bit concerned about changing things that are currently defined as imminent hazards and calling them substantial hazards, and the legal implications of doing that. And I'm a bit concerned about that, so I'm thinking, this 0321 contains not only the 8 contaminants, mostly metals and PCBs, that have numeric concentrations. And that section, it refers to what could pose an imminent hazard. So if we expanded, you know, so that not only is there the 8 compounds with numbers, but there's a paragraph below that I think includes other OHM that, you know, you could do an imminent hazard evaluation for. So maybe we could look at that as expanding that second paragraph and having more clarity in terms of what pathways or whatever would be maybe less critical to have a 2-hour notification or not. I know that could pose that it's a 2-hour notification, but maybe we could build in more time for someone to do the additional data collection and evaluation within, you know, the 120 days or something. I'm just concerned about changing things that are currently IHs, calling them something else, having more time, and the confusion that might cause.
So what things do you think we're discussing right now as potential modifications, do you think actually could pose an imminent hazard that are now not going to be addressed for, you know?
Well, anything you change from an imminent hazard to a substantial hazard has a legal implication to it.
No, I'm saying like be specific, like what are the scenarios that won't be captured by, if we redefine imminent hazards to really focus on short-term, non-cancer effects, and we then have this other category for things that, you know, could pose a high cancer risk over a shorter period of time.
no longer imminent hazard.
No, I know, I'm
And
saying
that's
specifically,
regulatory
like, what are the kinds of scenarios that you think?
Nancy's got the answer.
are gonna-
Well, one thing is, because this is how I understand it anyway, because the law says that the department's obligated to deal with imminent hazards in a certain period of time, the department becomes involved in, that's sort of been sort of right line for the department becoming involved in cases where there's an imminent hazard that has been identified versus other cases. And so I think the question is, it could, if we take all these things out of imminent hazards, that could put it in a category where in the future, the department may choose not to be involved in those, and that's a very, not have direct oversight on those. And that's a very different potential sort of management category.
But what happens if it's still triggering an IRA?
Right.
So DEP is still gonna see, okay, there's a
But
problem.
It's not the oversight, it's more when we would step
It's the
in if
jurisdiction.
the party didn't take care of the
Perform.
situation.
So Steve's concern is with the
Right.
statute, the term
Yeah.
imminent
Yeah, yeah,
hazard.
yeah, no, no, I
Yeah,
get
so
that.
There's certain things
the IRA
you
is
keep.
not
And
the.
you look at the list of, explosive conditions in a manhole or substantial release migration. All of those things, regardless of the 5-year risk, those you don't want to keep.
Well, and you are,
So-
we're not talking about any
So,
of those.
you know,
But that's not.
you
No.
gotta take a hard look at what.
The other aspect of the statutory language has to do with the imminent hazard shall be eliminated, and it doesn't talk about other things like in CEP, there's a feasibility component and things like that, so.
There is an imminent hazards as well, though, right, as part of your
The
evaluation.
standard for an imminent hazard is a higher.
Shall
It is a higher
be-
standard.
It's a higher
It's a
standard
higher
than for CEP.
And that's again why I'm concerned, all this, I hope people walk out not thinking it's hypothetical discussion about what changed, no?
No, I agree, I mean, it's not
I don't follow.
hypothetical. I get-
All right, well, okay, well,
So
okay,
what are
Lisa,
the-
I'll.
What are the types of conditions that now fall into a substantial hazard? Things that have left to persist for 5 years would be a risk.